The US Senate voted to approve Charles Kushner, the father of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as the next American ambassador to France on Monday. The real estate mogul was previously pardoned by the president in 2020 after having pled guilty to tax evasion and witness tampering, for which he served 2 years in prison. Kushner was first nominated as the next American ambassador to Paris in November, with several French officials accusing the 70-year-old of lacking proper diplomatic qualifications. During a Senate hearing, Kushner pledged to encourage French investment in American defense companies and bring Paris more in line with Washington's strategic interests. Kushner's appointment comes at a time of uncertainty for Franco-American relations, as the two nations diverge over Ukraine, trade, and European security realignment.
EU trade negotiator Maros Sefcovic has confirmed EU standards on food safety are not up for negotiation in the talks with the US over tariffs. The EU and US are locked in talks due to expire in early July after US President Donald Trump issued a 90-day window to negotiate. Washington has decried EU safety standards on agricultural products as one of the reasons for the tariff war.
I think we've been quite clear that we clearly would preserve our regulatory autonomy. And if I follow a little bit the discussion in the United States of America, I mean, there is also lots of talk about having healthier food, what should be the composition of the food processing and so on and so forth. And I think we already had this discussion in Europe, and we are very proud of our health and safety standards. If it comes to food, if it comes to agri-food production, we are going clearly to stick to them.
So that's not up for negotiation, standards?
I think if it comes to health and safety issues, I mean, clearly these are not up for negotiations.
Meanwhile, the EU negotiator says he is pushing for a fair and balanced deal with the US. But he says the EU stands ready to implement up to 95 billion euros of countermeasures if negotiations fail.
We are already paying 10% tariff, we are already paying 25% tariff for steel, we are already paying 25% for cars, and we really believe that this is simply not fair. Yeah. So we want to resolve it through the negotiated solutions. But of course, we are also preparing alternative where we would have to protect the European jobs and European companies, and therefore we started the consultations on eventual rebalancing measures.
A new series of U.S. products could be targeted for potential EU tariffs, including aerospace champion Boeing or alcohol products like bourbon. You can listen to the full interview on the Europe Conversation this Friday.
Heavy rainfall across Spain has filled up dam reservoirs across the country, forcing some to release some of their water. El Atazar Dam Reservoir in Madrid has been releasing water in a controlled manner, but now that the dam has reached maximum capacity, it is being forced to release water from an additional spillway. The heavy rainfall is in stark contrast with last year's stubborn drought. Scientists say climate change is making swings between dryness and downpour more acute.
Thank you very much.
The European Union announced that it will lift all remaining economic sanctions on Syria to allow the war-torn country to have a chance at recovery and prosperity. The bloc said it hopes the relief will ease access to financial funds and speed up the recovery timeline after the fall of longtime President Bashar al-Assad in December.
On Syria, ministers agreed to lift all economic sanctions while maintaining those related to Assad regime and human rights violations. This decision is reversible and conditional also on progress. There can be no peace without the path to economic recovery, and we all need a stable Syria. Is everything really ideal there? No, it is not. It's very clear, but I think we need to give the Syrian people a chance.
The decision comes just a few days after the U.S. announced it was lifting sanctions on the country. U.S. President Donald Trump announced the move in Riyadh as he embarked on his first tour of the Middle East in his second stint in office. The news was hailed by the interim Syrian government.
هذا النجاح المشترك وأنا أعتقده أنه نجاح مشترك برفع العقوبات الأمريكية واليوم أيضا بالإعلان عن رفع العقوبات من الاتحاد الأوروبي على سوريا وبالتأكيد العقوبات التي كانت مفروضة على سوريا لا تخص سوريا بالتحديد بل سيكون لها أثر إيجابي على المنطقة.
The EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, says the bloc didn't have a choice on whether or not to offer sanctions relief. She stressed that the options were either lift them and hope for the best, or risk another Afghanistan. She added that the EU will closely monitor the situation and will act accordingly if the trust is abused and no progress is made. The UN says that aid has not reached Palestinians yet, despite it beginning to enter Gaza 2 days ago. They say the delays have been due to the new Israeli security process to get aid cleared to distribution warehouses, which they've described as long, complex, complicated, and dangerous.
Just to make it clear, while more supplies have come in to the Gaza Strip, we have not been able to secure the arrival of those supplies into our warehouses and delivery points. In the end, about 4 trucks, not 5, were allowed in yesterday. Today we have a few dozen. I'm trying to get a more exact number, but that's where we are. But the point is the logistical, the security complications, and just the overall environment make this extremely, extremely difficult.
The aid coming in is the first in almost 3 months to trickle into the enclave. Gaza has been under a complete blockade since March, preventing food, basic items, medical supplies, and other critical aid from reaching residents.
Because of the blockade, there's so little stuff getting in. There's no food getting in, so people are starving. There's very little medical supplies coming in. But also the other very noticeable thing is the massive extent of destruction. I mean, Khan Yunis looks like Stalingrad.
The UN humanitarian agency has received approval for 100 aid trucks under the new Israeli scheme, a sharp drop-off from the 600 trucks entering Gaza daily during the latest ceasefire. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will only allow, quote, minimal aid to enter Gaza to preserve U.S. and ally support, who criticized the images of starvation coming out of the Strip.
The UK government announced it will be suspending free trade negotiations with Israel and announced new sanctions on settlements in the West Bank. The UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy has criticised Israel's military actions in Gaza as well as violence by Israeli settlers.
I'm announcing that we have suspended negotiations with this Israeli government on a new free trade agreement. We will be reviewing cooperation with them under the 2030 bilateral roadmap. The Netanyahu's government's actions have made this necessary. Yesterday, Minister Smodrik even spoke of Israeli forces cleansing Gaza, destroying what's left of residents, Palestinians, being relocated, he said, to third countries. We must call this what it is. It is extremism.
International pressure has been building on Israel following a nearly 3-month blockade of supplies into Gaza that led to famine warnings. The United States has voiced concerns over the growing hunger crisis, and France and Canada mirrored the United Kingdom and threatened to sanction Israel if it does not halt its offensive and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Members of the World Health Organization approved a treaty to avoid the mistakes of the COVID-19 pandemic in future global health crises. It will require countries to take steps to prepare for and respond to future pandemics, with the goal of making medical supplies more accessible across the globe. But there are still a few issues that have yet to be resolved, and the treaty won't go into force until they have been agreed upon. One item still on the table is the creation of a new pathogen access and benefit sharing system. in which countries share samples and data with drug makers in return for access to vaccines and medicine. The United States is not expected to ratify the treaty under the Trump administration, which could undermine its effectiveness. US negotiators left the treaty discussions after US President Donald Trump began the process of withdrawing from the WHO when he took office in January.
Cambodia on Tuesday marked 50 years since the country's communist Khmer Rouge launched a 4-year reign of terror that killed an estimated 1.7 million people. On Cambodia's annual Day of Remembrance, around 2,000 people attended a ceremony honoring the victims of the Khmer Rouge genocide at the site of one of the most notorious killing fields, some 15 kilometers south of the capital, Phnom Penh. Dozens of student actors from the Phnom Penh Art School reenacted brutalities under the Khmer Rouge, which held power from 1975 to 1979, when an estimated 1/4 of Cambodia's population was wiped out from torture, starvation, executions, and misrule. The Khmer Rouge captured Phnom Penh on 17 April 1975 and immediately herded almost all the city's residents into the countryside. The regime ruled until 1979, when it was driven from power by an invasion from neighboring Vietnam, forcing its ruler Pol Pot into hiding.